Coming up, the planet's wealthiest people are protecting themselves from mega wildfires and storms.
We are going to go to a bunker that we might very necessarily need.
But underground shelters highlight a sordid double standard, with some of the biggest polluting companies paying tens of millions of dollars to stay out of waters they helped muddy.
But whatever the future holds, I have some reassuring news. Rich people are going to be okay.
Heavy rains and floods simultaneously hit several cities across the planet, and the fossil fuel industry under scrutiny again, after a report by the US House Committee reveals decades of big lies and deception by oil and gas conglomerates.
It should go without saying.
And were actively doing everything in their power to not let this information out or cause deliberate misinformation so that they could continue with business as usual.
Just 2 degrees is on now.
What would you do if you were threatened with violence from a fossil fuel company?
Oh my God. I think there is power in speaking truth.
Heavy rains and flooding swamped several parts of the planet in late April and early May. Let's start in the US state of Texas, parts of which got several consecutive days of rain. This policeman's body cam captured one of the many rescue missions. The muddy water here in North Houston was almost 3 meters deep. The officer said he'd heard a resident screaming for help in a trailer park. He also rescued the survivor's dog and 2 other dogs that were stranded. In total, 91 counties were affected by the storms, which dumped more than 50 centimeters of water in what the governor, Greg Abbott, described as an extraordinary rain event. In Kenya, streets were transformed into canals, houses, roads, and bridges were damaged or destroyed. At the time of this report, the death toll stood at 230, and more than 212,000 people had already been forced out their homes. President William Ruto vowed to supply enough food for the affected and offer safe settlement for 40,000 displaced households. Heavier than usual rainfall and the flooding that followed killed sheep and cattle herds in northern Iraq. A major tunnel in the city of Kirkuk was unpassable. And reports are 4 members of a hiking team drowned in the Karadar district. Saudi Arabia had to close schools in several regions after intense overnight weather, which brought on strong winds, rain, a lack of horizontal visibility, hail, and thunderbolts. There were about 10 centimeters of flooding in some areas. It was enough to prevent many from leaving their homes. The National Meteorological Center issued red alerts for Qasim and other areas, including the capital, Riyadh. At least 7 people were killed in Indonesia's South Sulawesi province. Flood currents were so strong, entire houses were swept away. Local officials said there was little warning before the torrents hit. Scores were killed in Pakistan in storm-related incidents. Heavy rain fell there at nearly twice the historical average and left many homes unlivable in the south of the country. And authorities in southern Brazil said the flooding they saw there was the worst in more than 80 years. More than 4 dozen people were killed, and at the time of this report, another 111 were still missing. 129,000 others were forced out their homes. The regional governor linked the disaster to the climate crisis, which he said left the state Porto Alegre resembling what you normally only ever see in the movies.
A situação realmente cena de filme de terror. O pessoal na beira do asfalto, um colchão deitado no chão e dormindo ali mesmo com o que tem, com o que sobrou, uma geladeira.
Menos 20 cachorros, né, Alessandro? E eles estão presos na parte de cima, como se fosse um segundo andar num galpão grande. O acesso é bem complicado, porque está cheio de ferro na volta, com madeira. Aí é firme. Imagina a gente em frente também. Agora até minha mãe sonha.
Muito animal. A gente entrou, tem um cachorro muito grande, protetivo ali, protegendo os outros. Eu entrei, ele me mordeu, fiquei contendo ele para sair. Aparentemente não parece ninguém desidratado, nem mal ali dentro.
Agora vamos ver se a gente tem abrigo pra fundo, né?
Vamos lá, gurizada.
Quero ajudar tanto quanto eu posso. Enfim, sensação terrível, né? Fico imaginando todo esse pessoal, todas essas casas, nessa região que nós temos aqui, com certeza deve ter seus 200, 300 mil habitantes, por aí talvez. E todas essas famílias perderam absolutamente tudo.
Falei que está esgotado, eles estão precisando de mergulhador para reativar. Furou o bote, vamos mandar pelo lado para consertar o bote, furou.
What if you had a way to escape the flooding, brutal heat and worse? It's something the rich and famous have been looking into, a way to keep safe from pandemics, civil unrest and the climate crisis. Luxury bunkers, as they're called, are underground constructions that do just that, and they don't come cheap. Well, they do well to highlight the disparity between the rich and poor, insulating the ultra-wealthy from many of the problems they helped create.
Until recently, doomsday bunkers were the stuff of post-apocalyptic movies. Films like Leave the World Behind and Silo depict people inhabiting sprawling underground shelters after life above ground becomes unlivable. But fiction may be closer to fact than many of us think, as seen on the popular reality series Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
We are going to go to a bunker that we might very necessarily need. We might in the times of 2020. Oh.
And it's not just rich people thinking about bunkers. Surveys show a third of Americans admit to buying survival items. Underground shelters outfitted with energy, water, and food, however, are way beyond the reach of ordinary people.
This can grow up to 70 different species of plants, lettuces, tomatoes, carrots.
Fortified shelters are a booming business. They shield against cyber attacks, nuclear Armageddon, power grid failure, and extreme weather events. Meta CEO and the third richest man on the planet, Mark Zuckerberg, secured a $270 million bunker on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. His property reportedly includes a water and pump system, 2 central mansions linked with a tunnel, and a security apparatus with 200 cameras and blast-proof doors. And the compound, 3 times the size of Gibraltar, is shrouded in secrecy. Multiple site workers were fired for uploading pictures of the construction site, despite signing non-disclosure agreements. Another billionaire, wellness entrepreneur Frank Vandersloot, purchased an 8-square-kilometer ranch south of Zuckerberg's for $51 million. Microsoft's Bill Gates is reported to have security bunkers under each of his homes. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos already has a $90 million enclave prepared in Miami. With A-lister neighbors NFL star Tom Brady and Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka. One company providing the exclusive service, strategically armored and fortified environments, says its shelters go for $3 million and protect against viruses, solar storms, and electric grid collapse. The organization's CEO says some clients have even requested island fortresses. There is a glaring double standard. Just 12 billionaires currently generate more greenhouse gases annually than 2 million US homes. While they shield themselves from the problems, they helped create.
Climate change, the downfall of our democratic institutions, and earlier this year, the doomsday clock was put at 90 seconds to midnight amid AI threats. But whatever the future holds, I have some reassuring news. Rich people are going to be okay.
Well, speaking of the richest people, the oil industry, it's lied about its grasp of the impacts of fossil fuels on the environment, according to the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. It launched an investigation in 2021 to determine just how much misleading and greenwashing was taking place. But while they went about accusing big oil's pants of being on fire, Republicans won control of the House and shut down the investigation. Now, with the help of the Senate Budget Committee, a new and very damning report from the Oversight Committee sees the light of day.
Big oil tends to shrink away from talks about its involvement with climate change. But privately, big players in the industry have had plenty to say, with decades of effort gone into playing down the dangers of burning fossil fuels. That's per a new report on recently subpoenaed documents reviewed by the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. After calling a Senate Budget Committee hearing to spotlight the report, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse pulled no punches as he pointed out the industry's $750 billion in annual federal subsidies.
What is protecting the massive fossil fuel subsidies and what is preventing policies to reduce the danger is the same thing, the fossil fuel industry itself.
The report's title says it all: denial, disinformation, and doublespeak. Big Oil's evolving efforts to avoid accountability for climate change. It includes thousands of pages of private memos, internal papers, and email exchanges from 6 major companies and their trade associations: ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, Shell, the American Petroleum Institute, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The Senate Budget Committee's own website says it details a campaign of deception, disinformation, and doublespeak waged using dark money, front groups, false economics, and relentless exertion of political influence. Senator Whitehouse divided Big Oil's campaign into 4 phases. First, climate warnings from their own scientists about the burning of fossil fuels. Then, the creation of a secret strategy to preserve profits by undermining the science. After that, the plan put into action, with industry influence and political pressure to paint the warnings as a hoax. But the warnings became reality.
This hearing documents phase 4, the industry pivoting to pretending it is taking climate change seriously while secretly undermining its own publicly stated goal.
And Republicans, backed by oil industry donations, pushed back. Senator Chuck Grassley, who has accepted $139,000, says U.S. economic woes and energy prices are greater threats to national security than the climate crisis.
Democrats would rather accuse oil companies of conspiracy and raise gas prices than work with Republicans to write a budget or acknowledge the unpopularity of many climate change policies.
But it's hard to know where it will go from here. November elections could favor Republican control of the Senate and the White House. And it seems the Republican slogan for American prosperity is burn, baby, burn.
And I had a chat with global heating and climate change activist Shweta Narayan about the deceptive practices of oil companies who knew that burning fossil fuels would fuel global warming.
I'd love to get your initial response to documents from the U.S. House Committee that demonstrate that fossil fuel companies have understood since at least the 1960s that burning fossil fuels cause climate change.
I don't think there was ever a doubt. And we also, in the climate justice community, knew that fossil fuels industry knew about this fact and were actively doing everything in their power to not let this information out or cause deliberate misinformation so that they could continue with business as usual. So, I mean, I am not at all surprised. But once again, I'm amazed at the hypocrisy of these fossil fuel industries who have deliberately put people's lives at risk and put profits over people. And they're responsible. I mean, this is a crime that they're committing, and they continue to commit. And it's now upon the governments and the people to hold them accountable.
Talk about the methods you've seen these fossil fuel companies use to deliberately deceive people into believing that they were doing what they promised they would.
From subverting information, knowledge is important. From doubting the science and integrity of the scientists who are not only putting their passion in the data that they're producing, but now we are seeing scientists putting their bodies on the line with protests and information that they are trying to put out to call upon the governments on the urgency, discrediting information, legitimate information, doubting people's lived experience of climate catastrophes. And making it sound as if it was people's problem, or it's not their responsibility. They have tried everything in the playbook that they can possibly get their hands on, just to make sure that they continue to profit from the lives of the people.
Yeah, these documents talk about fossil fuel companies seeking to position natural gas as a bridge fuel between coal and renewable energy, while enmeshing natural gas in the US energy economy for the long term. This has been incredibly confusing and misleading, I find personally, particularly since I was at COP28 and this entire situation got just out of control. We knew who was in charge of the COP28. It's only logical that these companies face repercussions, right?
Absolutely, we have to hold them accountable, and not just accountability in terms of moral accountability. If it's the language of money that they understand, then they need to pay the compensation, the price of misleading public and governments, and they need to be held criminally accountable for their lies. That's that's needed.
These companies as well have been pushing the idea of carbon capture. What are your thoughts on this technology?
I mean, once again, we are sidelining the fact that we are in an urgent, desperate situation to make a transition away from fossil fuels. Carbon capture and storage and many such engineering technologies are they're going to prolong the lives of fossil fuel industry by misleading us, by giving us the false hope that they work, that their efficacy has not been proved, they're not financially viable, and they're not the solution. The solution is no new fossil fuels. The solution is not that you continue with business as usual and try to showcase with, again, using the same tactics of like they're showing that they have intent to do something, but that really doesn't mean anything. We are running out of time. If we don't take drastic action now, the goal of 1.5 degrees is nearly over. And that drastic action has no space for delays like carbon capture and storage. Frankly, and we don't even know the dangers that these technologies themselves pose on people. So there is a public health risk from continuing investments in fossil fuels, and there's a public health risk in these technologies that are not proven. What is proven, what is for a fact, is that we cannot afford to have any new fossil fuels.
How far down do you think this rabbit hole goes? For example, these papers also reveal that fossil fuel companies have been investing in universities like Harvard and Princeton to embed their messaging through their students. I find it hard to believe that these universities, which contain some of the most brilliant people on the planet, are doing this willingly. Do you think there is a deliberate campaign to greenwash the entire industry?
As I said, this is not new. I mean, in the 60s, the coal companies had doctors say that black lung disease, the coal miners' pneumoconiosis, which is a deadly disease, was actually good for the coal miners because it's prevented tuberculosis. Can you imagine doctors saying that? But they did say that, who were on the payrolls of the coal companies. So I don't find it at all shocking that there are spokespersons that they're actively recruiting in the academic community, in the scientist community, to discredit what is always known to us, what has always been known and understood by communities who are facing the worst impacts of climate crisis. These are all distraction and delay tactics. These are tactics that deceive people, and they need to be stopped.
Do you think we're getting close to stopping them?
We have no choice. We have to get close to stopping them, holding them accountable. The climate litigations that you're seeing around, and more are coming in way, and more people, and not just young people, but most recent litigation that I can think of was, I think, last month, where the father of late Ali from Iraq, his father filed a case against BP, British Petroleum, for seeking compensation for the damages, and for the death of his son from air pollution. So I think more and more people are getting aware. We need solidarity. We need to show solidarity to people who are at the fence line of these catastrophic impacts. And we need to come together as a global community to hold these corporate criminals accountable.
Before I let you go, Shweta, one of the lines in the document also talked about these fossil fuel companies following environmentalists and journalists, social media accounts to see exactly what stories they're telling. Do you think people are in danger when they tell these stories, when they act out against fossil fuel companies?
Absolutely. Intimidation has been their first and foremost weapon. I mean, the fact that this world is a dangerous place for any environmental defender who wants to defend his or her land, air or water or forest is evidence enough to say that protecting the planet is deadly. It has deadly consequences, and people are paying that prices with their lives. So I by no means would I consider it. I mean, it's a very, very serious issue, and people get intimidated into being silent, into being complicit. People get misled, and our fights for a better future for our children is being threatened with violence and with serious repercussions.
Shweta, what would you do if you were threatened with violence from a fossil fuel company?
Oh my God. I think there is power in speaking truth. And I would continue to organize, and I would continue to lend and seek solidarity and do my bit, which is morally and ethically right, and the only thing to do to ensure that my future generations have a planet to inhabit.
And climate disasters in recent years have destroyed thousands of homes in California. Local insurance companies in response have been pulling out of the homeowners insurance market because of the increased risk and massive payouts they've had to make after destructive storms, floods, and wildfires. Companies like Allstate and State Farm have either stopped issuing new policies or say they won't renew existing ones. An insurance firm nationwide did not renew around 10,000 policies in North California last year. State authorities are now getting involved in an attempt to overhaul regulations, but the reforms being put in place have put the insurance industry at odds with customer advocates.
Well, the insurance market right now is in chaos, and part of it is in chaos is that for years insurers have not had adequate rates. In the last 10 years, they lost an average of paid $1.13 for every dollar they took in. So insurers need to get adequate rates. Then they can start reviewing the policies and the mitigation efforts that people take and price them appropriately.
I hear a lot of discouraging stories. People saying their policies went up 700%. People saying they were dropped.
So I received a letter from my insurer, the same insurer that we've had since I bought this house in 1999, saying they were not going to renew our policy. They said we lived in a high fire area and they were not renewing it. If I can't sell it, apparently now you can't sell houses because they can't get insurance. I mean, it's just a disaster that's unfolding here.
And that's our show. I'll leave with images of floods around the world, floods doing a lot more damage, a lot more frequently.